The night was supposed to be perfect. I had planned every detail, every flower, every slice of cake, but one email sent by someone I didn't even know shattered everything I thought I understood about my family. And when they asked me to cut the cake, I refused. That moment at my mother's 65th birthday party in that dimly lit European bistro in Columbus would become the end of everything we were and the beginning of who I truly was meant to be. My name is Rachel Monroe, and at 34 years old, I had spent the better part of my adult life trying to be the daughter my family needed, even if I was never the one they wanted. That February evening, as I stood in the mirror adjusting my only good dress, a simple navy blue sheath I'd bought 3 years ago on clearance, I told myself tonight would be different. Tonight, at my mother's 65th birthday celebration, I would finally earn my place at the family table. The restaurant I'd chosen sat nestled in Columbus's German village, a quaint European bistro called the Golden Swan. I'd made the reservation 3 months in advance, knowing how Mother loved anything that reminded her of the trip to Paris she'd taken in her 20s before children, before responsibilities, before disappointment settled into the lines around her mouth whenever she looked at me. The warm yellow glow from the vintage Edison bulbs cast shadows across the exposed brick walls, and fresh white roses adorned each table. I'd spent $420 just on the deposit and flowers, money I'd saved by skipping lunch for 2 months. In my purse, wrapped in silver paper that cost more than my weekly groceries, lay the real surprise, a gold necklace from Whitman's Fine Jewelry. Mother had admired it last Christmas when we'd walked past the store window, her fingers pressed against the glass like a child outside a candy shop. $1,800, she'd sighed, for something so beautiful. I'd gone back the next day, put down a deposit, and paid it off in installments over 14 months. The sales associate knew me by name now, probably wondered why someone who wore the same rotating 5 outfits to work would buy such an expensive piece. I arrived at the restaurant at 6:30 p.m., 30 minutes before anyone else was due to arrive. The cake sat waiting in the kitchen, 3 tiers of vanilla sponge with raspberry filling and buttercream roses. Another $300 I'd hidden from my already strained budget. The manager, a kind woman named Petra, assured me everything would run smoothly. I'd typed up a timeline on my lunch break, printed it on silverwood capital letterhead by accident, but Petra hadn't seemed to notice the logo from the investment firm where I'd spent the last 8 years analyzing portfolios for people who had more money than they knew what to do with. My phone buzzed. Ethan. Running late. Deposition ran over. Start without me if you need to. Of course. My brother, the successful lawyer, couldn't even pretend that Mother's birthday took priority over his billable hours. Another text, this time from Lila. Jeremy and I are finding parking, can't wait to see everyone. My younger sister's enthusiasm felt genuine, but then again, everything came easily to Lila. The beloved teacher, the one with the handsome fiancé, the one who somehow managed to take 2 vacations a year despite making half my salary. I walked through the restaurant one more time, adjusting place cards I'd handwritten in calligraphy learned from YouTube tutorials. Mother at the head of the table, naturally. Ethan to her right, the position of honor for the eldest, the son, the one who carried forward the Monroe name even though he'd never carried the Monroe burdens. Lila to her left, where Mother could beam at her engagement ring and ask about wedding plans. And me, 3 seats down, close enough to flag the waiter, far enough to be forgotten in photographs. My reflection caught in the restaurant's antique mirror, and I saw what everyone else would see: Rachel. Reliable Rachel, in her sensible dress and practical flats. The same low ponytail I'd worn since college because anything else took time I didn't have. My face looked tired. It always looked tired, but I'd applied concealer under my eyes and even attempted lipstick, a shade called Confident Coral that felt anything but confident on my lips. 7 p.m. arrived with the February wind rattling the restaurant's front windows. I stood by the entrance, coat checked, smile ready, hands steady despite the knowledge that my checking account now held exactly $47 until my next paycheck. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the necklace in my purse, the cake in the kitchen, and the chance, this one perfect chance to show my family that I was more than just the middle child who'd never quite measured up. I was Rachel Monroe, and tonight, I was going to make my mother proud. The irony of standing in that warm bistro, watching the snow begin to fall outside, was that cold had been my earliest memory of family. Not the temperature our house in Worthington had working heat, but the chill that settled over dinner tables when report cards came home. The frost in Mother's voice when she introduced her children to friends. "This is Ethan. He's in accelerated programs. Lila's our artist, so creative. And Rachel. Rachel's very responsible." Responsible. That word had followed me like a shadow since I was 8 years old, when I'd started packing my own lunches because Mother was too busy driving Ethan to debate tournaments and Lila to dance classes. By 10, I was doing my own laundry, helping with grocery lists, balancing the checkbook when Dad's hands shook too much from his medication. The Parkinson's diagnosis had come when I was 12, but I'd been the only one who seemed to notice the tremor starting 2 years before. "Rachel doesn't need attention." I'd once heard Mother tell Aunt Patricia over coffee. "She just handles things. Unlike the other two, she never really demanded anything from us." She was right. While Ethan collected trophies and Lila collected praise, I collected part-time jobs. The paper route at 13, babysitting at 14, the mall pretzel stand at 16, coming home with the smell of butter and salt in my hair, doing homework under fluorescent food court lights during breaks. Every dollar went into a coffee can in my closet labeled college fund in my careful handwriting. Ethan's Harvard education came from Grandma's trust fund. Lila got scholarships for her potential. I got night classes at community college, then transferred to Ohio State, working 3 jobs to pay for what financial aid didn't cover. The 2008 crash changed everything. Dad's disability payments got cut. The house needed a new roof. Mother's part-time work at the library ended when they slashed funding. And somehow, despite being 22 and barely out of college myself, I became the family's financial safety net. "Just until things get better," Mother had said, sitting at our kitchen table with foreclosure notices spread like tarot cards predicting disaster. "Ethan's still in law school, and Lila's just starting her teaching degree. You're the only one with a real job, sweetheart." Sweetheart. She only called me that when she needed something. So I moved from my decent apartment to a studio above a Chinese restaurant where the walls were so thin I could hear every argument, every laugh track from my neighbor's TV. I traded my reliable Honda for a 15-year-old Corolla that needed a new transmission I couldn't afford. I sent home $800 a month, then $1,000, then more as Dad's medical bills multiplied like cancer cells. $22,000 for his last year of treatment, $15,000 for the roof, the furnace, the foundation repair, $9,000 for Lila's student teaching year when she couldn't possibly work and teach, $6,000 to pay off Ethan's BMW when he claimed a client expected successful lawyers to look the part. Every expense justified, rationalized, normalized until I couldn't remember what it felt like to buy something just for myself. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the erasure. At family dinners, the few I could attend between my main job and freelance work, the story of our survival got rewritten. Ethan spoke of how his legal expertise helped negotiate with creditors. Lila described the emotional support she provided during Dad's final months. Mother praised their strength, their sacrifice, their devotion. And me, I was edited out like a typo in the family narrative. Or worse. I was footnoted, "Rachel helped too." Of course, she's always been good with numbers. Good with numbers. As if love could be calculated in spreadsheets. As if sacrifice was just a matter of subtraction, taking from myself to add to them, over and over, until I forgot what it felt like to exist as more than a financial formula in their lives. I learned to smile through it, to nod when Mother bragged about Ethan making partner at 31, to clap when Lila announced her engagement to Jeremy the pharmaceutical sales rep, to stay quiet when they planned vacations I'd unknowingly funded. The Florida trip last year, my Christmas bonus, Ethan's new home theater system, my tax refund that I'd told them went to car repairs. "You're so lucky," Lila had said last Thanksgiving. "Not having a family of your own to worry about. It must be nice having all that freedom." Freedom. I'd almost laughed. I hadn't been on a date in 2 years, couldn't afford a gym membership, ate ramen 5 nights a week to save money. But in their version of reality, I was the lucky one, unencumbered, unburdened, everything that mattered. Standing in the Golden Swan now, I touched my purse, feeling the outline of the jewelry box inside. Maybe tonight would rewrite the story. Maybe this gift, this perfect night, would finally make them see me as more than their personal ATM. Maybe 65 would be the age when Mother finally noticed that her middle child had been drowning to keep everyone else afloat. 7:15 p.m. My phone vibrated against the hostess stand where I'd set it while adjusting the table flowers for the 3rd time. The notification preview showed an email. Subject line in bold, "You deserve to know the truth." No sender name. Just a string of numbers and letters from what looked like a throwaway Gmail account. I almost deleted it. My work email got plenty of spam, though this had come to my personal address. The one I only gave to family and close friends, not that I had many of the latter anymore. But something about those words made my finger hover over the screen. You deserve to know the truth. Did I? After years of accepting whatever version of reality my family served me, did I even want the truth? The restaurant was getting busier, couples settling into romantic dinners, the soft clink of wine glasses and silverware creating a symphony of normalcy I desperately wanted to join. I stepped into the small alcove near the coat check and opened the email. No greeting, no signature, just attachments and a single line. They think you're too stupid to check. Prove them wrong. My hands trembled as I opened the first attachment, a bank statement not mine, but my mother's. Joint account with Ethan. The deposits jumped out at me first, $800 on the 3rd of every month, $1,000 on the 15th. My transfers, my money. But it was the withdrawals that made my stomach drop. Cash withdrawal, $2,500. Memo line, Vegas weekend. Transfer to Ethan Monroe, $4,000. Poker debt. Purchase at Nordstrom, $1,800. The exact price of the necklace in my purse. The second attachment email threads between Mother and Ethan, dating back 2 years. Rachel sent extra this month. Said it was for Dad's memorial fund. Put $3,000 toward your Audi payment instead. She won't check. Mom, need another $2,000. Lost bad at cards. Tell R the roof needs emergency repair. She always falls for house stuff. Lila wants the Cabo trip for her bachelorette. Take it from R's latest, tell her insurance went up. I scrolled through message after message, each one a knife between my ribs. They had a system, a fucking system. Mother would invent emergencies. Ethan would corroborate. Lila would play innocent, and I would pay. Every single time. The third attachment nearly made me drop my phone. Photos from Lila's Instagram, the private one she thought I didn't know about. The Florida trip I'd supposedly funded for Mother's grief recovery. There was Lila, poolside at the Ritz-Carlton, captioned, "Thanks to Mom for the best birthday gift ever, dar blessed dar family money." The weekend I'd eaten nothing but rice and beans to send emergency funds for Ethan's client dinner. There he was at a casino, stacks of chips in front of him, grinning like he'd won the lottery, which, in a way, he had. The lottery of having a sister stupid enough to believe in family loyalty. The final attachment was a spreadsheet, my financial records, somehow pulled and analyzed. 5 years of transfers tallied $97,432. The document had notes in the margins. Utility bills actually paid $12,000, mortgage assistance $8,000, actual medical expenses $22,000, unaccounted for $55,000 plus. Suggested uses based on purchase patterns: gambling, luxury goods, entertainment. At the bottom, a final message. Check Ethan's court records. The case he won last month. He was the defendant. Securities fraud. Settled out of court with your money. The celebration dinner you paid for. He was celebrating not going to jail. I stood in that alcove, feeling the world tilt off its axis. Behind me, I could hear Petra asking if everything was all right for the Monroe party. The Monroe party. Even the reservation was under their name, not mine. I was just the one with the credit card. My phone buzzed again. Another email from the same address. Just one line. Your friend at Columbus Savings Bank thinks you should know. Delete these after reading. They don't deserve your protection anymore. Columbus Savings, where Mother had her accounts, where my college friend Sarah worked in IT. Sarah, who'd gotten mysteriously quiet whenever I mentioned family visits. Sarah, who'd stopped asking why I never went out anymore, why I wore the same clothes year after year, why I'd turned down the promotion that would have required relocating. I forwarded everything to my personal cloud storage, then deleted the emails as instructed. My reflection in the restaurant's dark window showed a woman I didn't recognize, pale, shaking, eyes wide with the kind of shock that comes from realizing your entire life has been a con game, and you were the mark. 7:25 p.m. 5 minutes until my family arrived. 5 minutes to decide what to do with the truth I'd apparently deserved to know all along. The necklace in my purse, $1,800 that my mother had already spent on herself months ago, felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I straightened my dress, touched up my lipstick with steady hands that surprised me, and walked back to the table. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: they were right about one thing in those emails. I wouldn't be the same fool who'd been paying for their lives while they laughed behind my back. Tonight's show was about to begin, but for the first time in my life, I was the one writing the script. 7:30 p.m. sharp. They arrived like actors taking their marks on a stage they'd performed on countless times before. Mother swept in first, wearing the burgundy dress I recognized from the Nordstrom charge on her statement. Her silver hair freshly styled in a salon visit that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. She air-kissed my cheek, leaving behind a cloud of Chanel No. 5, another luxury I'd unknowingly subsidized. "Rachel, darling, you look..." She paused, searching for a compliment like someone digging through a junk drawer. Prompt, as always. Ethan followed, his charcoal suit impeccable, his smile practiced from countless client meetings and, apparently, settlement negotiations for his own fraud charges. He clapped me on the shoulder with the same hand that had typed those emails about my gullibility. "Hey, Rach, thanks for organizing this. You know none of us have the time for party planning." "No," I thought, watching him check his Rolex, the one he'd bought after that crucial client dinner last spring. "You just have time for spending what I earn." Lila burst through the door with Jeremy, giggling about something on her phone. The diamond on her finger caught the light, and I wondered how much of that ring had been paid for with my roof repair money. She hugged me quickly, the kind of perfunctory embrace you give a coworker you tolerate, not a sister who'd paid for your degree. "Oh my God, Rachel, this place is adorable, very... you." She meant boring, safe, predictable, everything they'd counted on me to be. We settled at the table, and the performance began in earnest. Ethan launched into a story about his latest victory in court, careful not to mention which side of the defendant's table he'd been sitting on. The opposing counsel didn't know what hit them, he boasted, cutting into his $40 steak my treat. Naturally. Sometimes I think I should teach a masterclass in negotiation. "You certainly negotiated yourself out of prison," I wanted to say, but instead, I smiled and nodded, playing my role of the supportive sister one last time. Mother beamed at him, then turned to Lila. "Tell Rachel about the wedding venue you're considering. The one in Napa, though I suppose that might be a bit ambitious for some budgets." Her eyes flicked to me, a reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. "Oh, it's stunning," Lila gushed. "Jeremy's parents are helping, of course. They understand the importance of starting a marriage off right. Not everyone has to struggle. You know..." The irony was excruciating. They were performing their usual dinner theater, Ethan the successful son, Lila the cherished daughter, Mother the matriarch presiding over her accomplished brood, while I sat there knowing it was all funded by the struggling they claimed I'd chosen. What about you, Rachel? Mother asked, her tone suggesting she was fulfilling an obligation. Any news from your, what is it you do again? Something with numbers. Financial analysis, I said quietly. I analyze portfolios, assess risk, identify fraud. I let that last word hang in the air a moment. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, someone has to do the boring jobs. Mother laughed, and the others joined in. Though I do wish you'd put a little more effort into your appearance. Dear, how do you expect to find a husband looking so tired all the time? Look at your sister, she makes half your salary but manages to look presentable. Half my salary. She knew exactly what I made, exactly what Lila made, because she'd been calculating how much she could extract from me down to the penny. Speaking of finances, Ethan smoothly redirected, probably nervous about the fraud comment. I've been thinking about investment opportunities. Real estate, maybe. The market's hot right now. Wow, with what money? I asked innocently. I thought lawyers had all those student loans to pay off. He laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. Some of us are better with money than others. Rach, it's all about knowing how to leverage your resources. My resources. That's what I was to them. A resource to be leveraged. The appetizers came and went. Through the salad course, I listened to Mother complain about the cost of her new car, a Lexus she desperately needed after the old Honda just died, though I'd seen that Honda in Ethan's garage last week. Perfectly functional. During the main course, Lila described her classroom's needs with theatrical sighs, setting up for another request for money. No doubt. Those poor kids, she said, though I knew from her Instagram she'd spent last weekend at a spa resort. You're so quiet tonight. Rachel, Mother observed as dessert menus appeared. This isn't like you. Are you feeling well? You're not getting sick. Are you... You know you can't afford to miss work. No, I couldn't afford anything anymore. Not after funding their lives, their lies, their complete and utter disregard for my existence beyond what I could provide. I'm fine, I said, reaching for my purse. Actually, I have something for you. I pulled out the silver-wrapped box, watched Mother's eyes light up with the greed I now recognized had always been there. She tore into it with the excitement of a child, then froze when she saw the jewelry store logo. Oh, Rachel, she breathed, opening the box to reveal the gold necklace she'd already bought herself months ago. The confusion on her face was almost worth the $1,800. Almost. She held it up, and I saw the moment of recognition, the quick calculation behind her eyes. It's lovely, dear. How thoughtful. Her voice was strained, trying to act surprised about a gift she'd already been wearing in private. Try it on, I suggested sweetly. I want to see how it looks. Oh, maybe later, she said quickly, closing the box. I wouldn't want to lose it in the restaurant. But you were wearing one just like it in the photos from last month's charity gala, I said, tilting my head. What a coincidence. The table went silent. Ethan's hand tightened on his wine glass. Lila suddenly became fascinated with her napkin. Mother's smile flickered like a candle in the wind. You must be mistaken, she said coldly. I would remember such an expensive piece. Yes, I thought you would. Every piece, every dollar, every lie you told to get it. The cake arrived at 8:45 p.m., carried out by 2 servers while a third dimmed the lights. The vanilla and raspberry creation I'd spent $300 on glowed with 65 candles, casting dancing shadows across my family's faces. Everyone began singing Happy Birthday, their voices a discordant chorus that felt more like a funeral dirge than a celebration. That's when I saw Petra, the restaurant manager, approaching our table with an envelope in her hand. But she wasn't walking toward me. She was heading straight for Ethan, and I knew exactly why because I'd arranged it myself during my trip to the restroom 10 minutes earlier. Excuse me, Mr. Monroe, Petra said, her German accent thick with confusion. This was left at the host stand for you. The gentleman said it was urgent." Ethan's face went pale, but his lawyer's training kicked in. "There must be some mistake. I'm not expecting—" "No mistake, sir. He described you perfectly. Said you were the one in the expensive suit at the Monroe birthday party." Mother had just blown out her candles, smoke still curling toward the ceiling. When Ethan opened the envelope, I watched his face transform confusion, recognition, then pure terror as he unfolded the printed emails, the bank statements, the spreadsheet with its damning calculations. His hands shook, rattling the paper like dead leaves. "What is it, darling?" Mother asked, reaching for the papers. She'd barely glanced at them when her celebratory smile crumbled like ancient parchment. This isn't," Ethan stammered, his usual courtroom eloquence deserting him. Lila snatched the papers, her teacher's instinct to problem-solve kicking in. But as she read, her face went from pink to white to green, like a horrible Christmas decoration. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, who did this?" "What's happening?" Jeremy asked, the only genuinely confused person at the table besides the hovering servers, who Petra quickly ushered away with a subtle hand gesture. The restaurant's ambient noise seemed to fade as my family passed the documents around like evidence in a trial they'd already lost. I could see other diners glancing our way, sensing drama the way sharks sense blood in the water. Mother's hands trembled as she read her own words. "She won't check. She always falls for house stuff. Ours too trusting for her own good." "Someone's trying to frame us," Ethan said, his voice pitched too high, too desperate. "These are fabricated, photoshopped. I can prove." "The bank statements have account numbers," I said quietly, speaking for the first time since the cake arrived. "The emails have timestamps that match the transfers. The Instagram posts have metadata. But please, Ethan, tell us more about proving innocence. You must have learned a lot about that during your securities fraud case." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the soft jazz music seemed to pause, holding its breath for what came next. "You knew," Mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've known this whole time." "No," I corrected, my voice steady as granite. "I found out tonight, about an hour ago, actually, right before you all arrived to celebrate spending my money on this dress, that suit, that ring, and God knows what else." "Rachel, sweetheart, you don't understand," Mother began, reaching for her manipulative script, but I was done with her performances. $97,000, I said, loud enough for the adjacent tables to hear. "That's what I've given you over 5 years. $22,000 for Dad's treatment, which was real, which I'd give again in a heartbeat. But the rest, $55,000 for emergencies that never existed, repairs that never happened, bills that were never due." "Keep your voice down," Ethan hissed, glancing around at the other diners who weren't even pretending not to stare anymore. "We can discuss this privately." "So, like you discussed spending my money privately, like you privately planned your lies every month." I pulled out my phone, showing them I had everything backed up. "Securities fraud, Ethan. You were about to go to prison, and you used my money to buy your way out. Then you sat at my table, eating my food, laughing about how good you were with finances." Lila started crying, but even her tears seemed calculated, performed. "Rachel, we're family. Family helps each other. Family." I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. "Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't conspire. Family doesn't sit around mocking the person keeping them afloat while spending her money on spa days and poker games." Mother straightened in her chair, trying to reclaim her matriarchal authority. "How dare you air our private business in public like this after everything we've done for you?" "While what?" I interrupted. "What exactly have you done for me? Name one thing, one time you helped me, supported me, or even acknowledged that I'm bleeding myself dry for you." She opened her mouth, then closed it, like a fish gasping for air it didn't deserve. The cake sat between us, melting slowly under the heat of the candles no one had bothered to remove, wax dripping onto the pristine white frosting like tears, or maybe like blood, the blood I'd given, month after month, to keep these parasites fed. "The police might be interested in this," I said, tapping the papers still clutched in Ethan's white-knuckled grip. "Wire fraud is a federal crime, but lucky for you, I'm not vindictive. I'm just done." "Done?" Mother's voice cracked. "What do you mean, done?" The servers hovered in the background, uncertain whether to clear plates or call security. Petra stood by the kitchen door, watching me with something that looked like sympathy, or maybe admiration. Around us, the other diners had given up all pretense of not watching. We were dinner theater, the kind of show that would be whispered about over brunches for weeks to come. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. "I mean done, Mother. Done being your ATM. Done being your joke. Done pretending we're a family when all I've ever been to you is a resource to exploit." I remained standing, my hands steady on the back of my chair, and began to speak with the clarity of someone who had nothing left to lose. The entire restaurant had gone quiet, forks suspended midway to mouths, wine glasses paused at lips. I didn't care. They wanted a show I'd give them one worth remembering. $22,000 for Dad's medical bills, I began, my voice carrying across the hushed space. "Every penny worth it, even though you, Mother, spent the insurance payout on a kitchen renovation 6 months after he died. $15,000 for the roof that never leaked, the furnace that never broke, the foundation that never cracked. I know because I called the contractors. They had no record of any work at your address." Mother's face had gone from pale to blotchy red, her carefully applied makeup no match for the shame creeping across her features. But I wasn't done. Not even close. $9,000 for Lila's student teaching year. I turned to my sister, whose tears had miraculously stopped the moment I'd started listing numbers. "Funny how you managed that trip to Cabo, though, and the weekend in Vegas for your bachelorette party, and the designer dress for someone who couldn't afford groceries." "Those were gifts," Lila protested weakly. "From friends. From Mother, who paid with my money. I have the receipts. Lila, every single one." Ethan tried to stand, his lawyer instincts telling him to take control of the narrative. "This is neither the time nor the place." "Sit down," I said, and something in my voice made him comply immediately. $6,000 for your car payments. The BMW you just had to have to impress clients. The same clients you were defrauding, apparently. $4,000 for your gambling debts, yes, multiple debts, because you're as bad at poker as you are at being a brother. $3,000 for that boys' weekend in Atlantic City where you lost even more. Another $2,500 for the Vegas trip where you posted photos of yourself with stacks of chips on Instagram, thinking I didn't follow your private account. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through screenshots I'd saved while sitting in that coat check alcove. "Would you like me to read some of your messages? Rachel's too stupid to check? She believes anything if you mention Dad. Easy money, just cry a little and she caves. That's what you wrote about me, your sister, the one who went hungry so you could eat at 5-star restaurants." "We never asked you to go hungry," Mother snapped, grasping at straws. "No, you just asked for money you knew I didn't have. And when I said I couldn't afford it, you'd remind me how Ethan was building his career, how Lila was shaping young minds, how family makes sacrifices, except the only one sacrificing was me." I reached into my purse and pulled out a small notebook, the one I'd started keeping 3 years ago when the requests became too frequent to remember. January 5th, 2000 for Mother's emergency dental work. The dentist has no record of you being a patient. February 20th, 1500 for Ethan's Bar Association dues. The Bar Association says you've been on a payment plan for 2 years. March 3rd, 800 for Lila's classroom supplies. Strange how those supplies looked exactly like a Michael Kors purse in your Instagram story. Each date, each amount, Each lie landed like a physical blow. I watched them shrink into their chairs, the weight of their deception finally crushing the facades they'd worn for so long. $3,500 for the Florida trip that was supposed to help Mother grieve. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Grief apparently requires poolside mojitos and spa treatments at the Ritz-Carlton. The same weekend I was eating ramen for every meal because I'd sent you my grocery money. How dare you spy on us? Mother's attempt at indignation fell flat, like a bad actress forgetting her lines. Spy, you posted everything on social media. You documented your own lies, tagged locations, shared receipts of your excessive spending. You were so confident in my stupidity that you didn't even try to hide it. The cake continued to melt between us, the candles now extinguished by their own wax. The perfect roses I'd requested turned into grotesque parodies of celebration. Around us, some diners had actually turned their chairs to watch, like we were community theater performing tragedy in real time. $420 for tonight, I continued, my voice never wavering. The deposit, the flowers, the cake, the dinner you're currently digesting, all from the daughter you call tired-looking, boring, unsuccessful, the one whose salary you know down to the cent because you've calculated exactly how much you can bleed from me each month. Jeremy, poor confused Jeremy, finally spoke up. Lila, is this true? Did you really? It's complicated, Lila said quickly, shooting me a venomous look. Rachel doesn't understand family dynamics. I understand theft. I cut her off. I understand fraud. I understand that for 5 years. I've been funding a lifestyle you couldn't afford while being told I was the family disappointment. I understand that while I was sleeping in a studio apartment with roaches and black mold, you were using my money to pay for your engagement party at the country club. We're your family, Mother's last desperate card, played with shaking hands. No, I said quietly, the simple word echoing in the silence. Family doesn't do this. You're just strangers who happen to share my DNA and my bank account. But that ends tonight. Petra approached our table with the check folder, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes showing a flicker of understanding. She'd probably seen family dramas unfold before, but nothing quite like this public unraveling. She placed the leather folder precisely in the center of the table, equidistant from everyone, as if acknowledging that the question of who would pay had become the evening's final act. Whenever you're ready, she said softly, then retreated to give us space for what she must have sensed would be the crescendo of our family's destruction. I reached for my wallet, pulled out 2 $50 bills, and placed them on the table. That covers my meal and tip for my server, I said, looking directly at Petra. The rest of the $420 bill, that's on them. Rachel, Mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest in theatrical shock. You can't possibly. I can and I am. I stood again, smoothing my dress, the cheap fabric suddenly feeling like armor. For 5 years, I've paid for everything, every meal, every celebration, every fabricated emergency. Tonight, for the first time, you'll pay for yourselves. Ethan's face went from red to purple. This is ridiculous. You organized this dinner. You invited us to celebrate Mother's birthday, which I did, with a cake and a gift. The dinner. That's what family does together. Isn't it share expenses support each other? Or does that only apply when the money flows from me to you? The neighboring tables weren't even pretending to eat anymore. One woman had actually taken out her phone, though whether to record or text about the drama, I couldn't tell and didn't care. I don't have my wallet, Lila said quickly. A lie so transparent I almost laughed. I'd seen her pull it out earlier to show Jeremy a photo. Then I guess Ethan will cover you. He's the successful lawyer, after all, the one who's so good with money. I turned to my brother, whose jaw was clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. Unless that success is as fake as your client dinners. Mother fumbled for her purse, her hands shaking. This is extortion. No, Extortion is telling your daughter that her father needs medication, then using that money for a cruise. Extortion is threatening to lose the family home unless she sends her rent money. Extortion is $55,000 stolen through emotional manipulation and lies. The cake sat between us like a crime scene. The once perfect frosting now a melted mess. The raspberry filling bleeding through the white like wounds. Mother stared at it, then at me, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "Cut the cake! Rachel!" she finally said, her voice taking on that commanding tone that had controlled me for so many years. "Stop this nonsense and cut the cake. We'll discuss this at home, privately, like civilized people." I looked at the cake knife Petra had left beside the plates, its silver surface reflecting the restaurant's warm lights. For years, I'd been the one to serve others, to cut their portions, to ensure everyone got what they wanted while leaving nothing for myself. The symbolism was so heavy-handed it might have been funny if it weren't my life. "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge. "What do you mean? No." Mother's voice rose an octave. "It's my birthday cake." That I paid for. To celebrate a woman who stole from me, who conspired against me, who treated me like an ATM with a pulse. I picked up my coat from the back of my chair, sliding it on with deliberate slowness. "I'm not cutting anything for you ever again. Not cake, not checks, not corners on my own life to accommodate your greed." Ethan stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "You can't just leave us with the bill. Why not you left me with all of them for 5 years?" I pulled on my gloves, each finger a small act of defiance. "Besides, you're resourceful. You know how to leverage assets. Remember, figure it out." "Rachel, please." Lila's voice broke. Actual tears this time, though I suspected they were more about the public humiliation than any genuine remorse. "We're sorry. We didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. Every transfer request, every sob story, every manipulative text was intentional. You meant all of it. You just never meant to get caught." Mother stood now too, her dignity in tatters but still trying to salvage authority. "If you walk out that door, you're no longer welcome in this family. Do you understand? You'll be dead to us." I actually smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd felt in years. "I've been dead to you since Dad's funeral. You just kept my corpse around to pay the bills." The entire restaurant was watching now. No pretense left. A server at another table had stopped mid-pour, wine bottle suspended in air. The hostess stood frozen at her station, menus clutched to her chest. Even the kitchen staff had emerged, drawn by the spectacle of a family detonating in real time. "I'm done being your financial life support," I said, addressing all 3 of them. "The automatic transfers end tonight. The emergency loans stop now. The guilt, the manipulation, the theft, it's over." "You'll regret this," Ethan said, his lawyer voice trying one last closing argument. "When you're alone on holidays, when you need family." "I've been alone at every holiday for 5 years, sitting at your tables while you celebrated with my money. As for needing family," I looked at each of them in turn, memorizing their faces twisted with rage and panic and disbelief. "I need family like I need a hole in my head or in my bank account." Mother grabbed the cake knife, her knuckles white around the handle. For a moment, I thought she might throw it, but instead, she stabbed it into the cake with such force that the plate cracked. "Cut your own cake then," she screamed, dignity completely abandoned. "Take your piece and choke on it." "I don't want any piece of this," I said quietly. "Not the cake, not the lies, not the family that was built on my destruction. I'm done taking crumbs while you feast on my life." I walked toward the door with measured steps, each one feeling like a small victory. Behind me, I could hear the chaos escalating, Mother demanding to speak to the manager, Ethan threatening legal action against the restaurant for allowing this harassment, Lila sobbing dramatically about her ruined family. The other diners watched my exit like the final scene of a play they'd never forget. But I had one more card to play. Pausing at the hostess stand, I turned back to face them one last time. By the way, Ethan, you should know that I've already spoken to my lawyer, Diane Fletcher from Fletcher and Associates. She specializes in financial fraud and family law. Every transaction I've documented, every email you sent, every lie you told, it's all been submitted as evidence. Not for a criminal case, though she says I'd have grounds for one, but for a civil suit to recover the $55,000 you stole. The color drained from Ethan's face so fast I thought he might faint. You can't prove. Bank records, emails, text messages, social media posts, everything time-stamped, everything traceable. Diane says it's one of the clearest cases of financial exploitation she's seen. The fact that you're a lawyer who committed securities fraud while stealing from your sister, that's what she called deliciously ironic. Rachel, wait. Mother started toward me, but I held up my hand. The papers will be served Monday. All three of you. Joint and several liability. Diane called it. You're all equally responsible for the full amount. I pulled out my phone, showing them the email confirmation from my lawyer's office. Oh, and Ethan. She knows about your fraud case. Says the Bar Association will be very interested in how you've been funding your lifestyle. The manager, Petra, appeared beside me, and I handed her my business card. If they give you any trouble with the bill, this has my lawyer's contact information. The meal is their responsibility. She nodded, her expression suggesting she'd be telling this story for years. I looked back at my former family, one last time. They stood among the ruins of the birthday dinner like survivors of a bombing they'd triggered themselves. The cake continued to melt, the cracked plate now leaking raspberry filling onto the white tablecloth like blood from a wound that would never heal. The email tonight wasn't really anonymous, I said, my final revelation. Sarah from Columbus Savings Bank, you remember her. Mother, the nobody from my college you said I shouldn't waste time with, she sent it. She's been watching you steal from me for 2 years, waiting for me to wise up. She has everything backed up on the bank's servers. Legal discovery is going to be fascinating. Mother collapsed into her chair, the weight of her crimes finally crushing her. Ethan pulled out his phone, probably to call whatever lawyer friends he had left who'd take his call after the fraud case. Lila just stood there, Jeremy beside her looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Happy birthday, Mother, I said, pulling on my gloves. Consider this my final gift, the truth. It's worth a lot more than $97,000. I walked out into the February night, the cold air hitting my face like freedom itself. Behind me, through the restaurant's windows, I could see them arguing with Petra about the bill, their gestures frantic, their carefully constructed facades in ruins. Other diners were openly staring, some even applauding my exit. My phone buzzed. Sarah, saw the charge for dinner just post, then saw it reversed for your portion only. I'm proud of you. I typed back, thank you for everything, for seeing what I couldn't, for caring when they didn't. Want to grab coffee tomorrow, my treat? We can plan your new life as a person who keeps her own money. Yes, I replied, and realized I was crying, not from sadness, but from relief. The weight I'd carried for 5 years was gone, transferred back to the shoulders that should have carried it all along. As I walked to my beat-up Corolla, I made a mental list of things I could now afford a better apartment without roaches, decent food instead of ramen, maybe even a vacation, my first in 5 years. The $47 in my checking account would grow now that it wasn't being drained by parasites disguised as family. I sat in my car for a moment, looking back at the Golden Swan one last time. Through the window, I could see them still arguing. The cake abandoned, the celebration transformed into a crime scene. Petra stood firm, arms crossed, probably explaining that someone had to pay and it wouldn't be the restaurant. My phone rang. Ethan. I declined. Then Mother. Declined. Then Lila. I blocked all 3 numbers, each action feeling like cutting chains that had bound me for too long. The email had been right. I deserved to know the truth. But more than that, I deserved to be free from the people who'd turned my love into their personal ATM. As I drove away, leaving them with their bill and their consequences, I realized something profound. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's invoice. They'd taught me that family was about blood. Tonight, I learned it was about bleeding, and I was done being the one who bled. My name is Rachel Monroe, and at 34 years old, I finally learned the most expensive lesson of my life. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the absence of people who only see you as a resource to exploit. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't dramatic or violent, it's simply presenting people with the bill for their own choices. The cake I refused to cut would be thrown away, uneaten. The family I'd tried so hard to hold together would dissolve like sugar in rain. But for the first time in 5 years, I would wake up tomorrow knowing my money was mine, my life was mine, and my future was finally, completely mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your kindness? I'd love to hear your experiences.